So happy to be with Mr. Money in the Bank, the youngest United States champion in WWE history, and what I think is going to be one of the biggest superstars in all of WWE in the next 15 to 20 years. Theory, welcome to Under the Ring Pro Wrestling Conversations.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you. So let's start with current events. So you interrupted Johnny Gargano's return on Monday Night Raw, and he answered by faking you out with the way high five and nailing you with a super kick. What was it like to see him on Monday Night Raw? And I'm assuming you guys could have a match now.
What was it like to see somebody that you thought, stood next to you, somebody that you thought would support you, after everything you did for them, and to literally manipulate me with something that, we did as pretty much as father and son would, the no look high five, and then he faked me out and kicked me right in the face. To me, that is well, I mean, he's pretty much already written the way his Monday Night Raw journey is going to go, and mine, it's not going to be at my expense. I can tell you that.
The way on NXT entertained me on so many levels. I especially liked the very Gargano Christmas segment that you guys did. You and Johnny and Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell, and actually really Dexter Loomis too, are also uniquely talented. What was that particular run like to do, and was it as fun to perform as it looked?
Everything that you've seen, and I feel like as much excitement and just the enjoyability of that, that's how we were all feeling. We literally all showed up every time we had something to do, and it was just a great time. And it was just kind of like a collaboration on just everything, all the ideas, just really getting to bring everything together, and we kind of just really did feel like a family.
And what was that period like? Because I know you were up on Raw a little bit and had WrestleMania, and then we're back in NXT. How did that period in between kind of prepare you for what you're doing now?
Yeah, that was an interesting time, just because the pandemic was going on, and I was on NXT, and they needed some people to kind of be on the Raw roster at the time when we were at the Performance Center, and the Performance Center was somewhere that I was at every day at NXT, so it wasn't too much of a change there. But I would say nothing really gets you prepared for Monday Night Raw or SmackDown, more than just being there and really just jumping in the deep end and seeing how you do.
And you could not have had two more starkly different WrestleMania experiences. You had the empty warehouse WrestleMania with Angel Garza against the Street Profits in 2020. And then you move on to wrestling Pat McAfee in a huge stadium in Texas, extremely high profile match. What were those both like? And what were your feelings about what you were able to do with Pat McAfee? And also just what's he like?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I never really looked at it that way. The two differences of the two WrestleManias that I was a part of, having that no crowd around and still being WrestleMania, but everybody knows that WrestleMania is the biggest show, and just not having that WWE universe around really makes the difference. And then fast forwarding to me being on my next WrestleMania, facing Pat McAfee, just sold out stadium, like it's crazy. And then to on top of that, being there with Mr. McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin, it's insane. And somebody like Pat McAfee that literally I don't know what he can't do, as an entertainer and as entertaining as he is and he was, and just being able to be in the ring with him and how physically gifted he is in the ring, it all came together so well. And honestly, that moment was great, and I'm glad I got to share it with him.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that too, because like he, as entertaining of a guy, and as so many different things he actually does within wrestling and then outside of wrestling too. He is such a great athlete, but you are too. So that's a great matchup. Like, you do some things in the ring that just blow my mind sometimes. The springboard drop kick, into the ring, and that move you do on the rope with it's kind of a Spanish fly off the split
Yeah,
leg, kind of. I don't even know what to call it,
I
but
call it I call that one ARF because of the man that trained me, AR
ah,
Fox. Yeah.
interesting. Have you been doing that one for a while too? That move?
It's so crazy. I actually I had the a match with Finn Balor on Raw, and it was the first time that I was going to be able to kind of do it. And I wanted to do it for my coach, so it was really cool getting to because that's his finishing move. So that's why I called it that.
It's funny you mentioned AR Fox too, because he was actually somebody I had in my notes to ask you about. Your decision to become a pro wrestler and then kind of pursue WWE. I was kind of interested in how that came about. I know you trained with AR Fox initially. He's had a little bit of buzz in his career lately, and just what was it like that journey and evolve with kind of Gabe Sapolsky and then ending up in NXT? What was your beginning like, and how did everything kind of move to get you where you are now?
Well, so when I was 8, I knew I wanted to be in the WWE, but I was always looking for different ways to do that. So at 12, I started working out to prepare myself for that. At 17, I tried a bodybuilding competition in hopes to get a tryout opportunity by somehow maybe there would be some scouts at the show, but there weren't. So then I realized I have to join a wrestling school, and that's when I met AR Fox in Atlanta at the wrestling school WWA 4, and things just kind of took off. He kind of explained to me how it works. You know, you have to do a lot of shows where you're not going to make any money. You're going to have to travel. You're going to have to spend money that you don't have. And that's just the grind of it, and kind of slowly stepping my way up. And I think he started realizing how serious I was about it. And then he reached out to, at the time, the guy that owned Evolve was Gabe Sapolsky. I got into Evolve, started getting to work with just so many talented people, and even Riddle was at the top of Evolve at the
Right.
time I was there. And just getting to work with all those guys and then eventually getting to NXT and kind of just climbing the ranks as I'm learning and I'm growing and getting older.
Winning Money in the Bank is such a huge accomplishment for most people in WWE. You had a tough match against Bobby Lashley early in the show before pulling off the big feat. What did becoming Mr. Money in the Bank mean to you, and how excited and ready are you for that next step?
For me, that moment, just dreaming about that. I mean, I remember back when I was 9 years old, sitting in a friend's living room watching WrestleMania, and it was when they still did like the big Money in the Bank matches at WrestleMania, and everybody just knows how much your career changes when you have the Money in the Bank, and the potential of successfully cashing in changes your entire career. Like it puts you, you know, in the same category as world champions, and everybody knows that list is it just can't be touched. And for me to know that on my path with this Money in the Bank contract, that's a huge possibility. And for me, I've never doubted myself, so I'm not doubting myself that that won't happen. So that's man, it speaks for itself.
And a pretty big stage for a world title match and maybe a Money in the Bank cash in coming up at Clash at the Castle in Cardiff. I was going to ask you what you think about that.
I'm super excited, especially going to Cardiff. I've never been. I've heard a lot of great things, and just to have a show there and just get to interact with new fans and just feel all that energy. And I'm sure they're all going to be so very happy if I cash in.
Do you like carrying a briefcase with you wherever you go? I'm guessing you don't maybe keep your lunch in it like Otis does.
You know what? I could complain about it, but at the same time, I know the prestige in what I have in my hand, and I mean, it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. It's all worth it.
So the first Monday Night Raw in the new creative regime was at Madison Square Garden, famously now with the "Who's Your Daddy" chants towards you. It's funny because I went on social media after that show and someone said, "Man, gosh, they really buried Theory," and I said, Theory was actually the focus of the first hour of the most important Monday Night Raw of the last 21 years. On the receiving end from Roman Reigns, on Brock Lesnar on the previous SmackDown, the Usos, Drew McIntyre, Lashley, and actually Dolph Ziggler too. Does it make you feel good to be involved in so many things on the show and have the fans have such a reaction towards you, even if it's being booed and ridiculed or whatever?
Yeah, it's so funny you bring up that show because I vividly remember like being out there with Roman, and everybody knows, I mean, Roman's the head of the table. So that's just huge to be out there with him, and to be able to have that kind of reaction and just that participation from everybody was really cool. But also the match, even having a match with Drew McIntyre. But a moment that I remember vividly was I remember standing on the apron and I was watching Sheamus in there with Bobby Lashley and Drew's on the apron. And I'm like, wow, like I'm on Monday Night Raw with literally three dudes that I grew up watching, and they motivated me. And I'm literally out here having a tag match with them in Madison Square Garden on Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, and it's the Mecca. And I think your first MSG match, the one with Brock Lesnar on the live event?
I think it was for the WWE Championship.
Right, right. Um, you've generally been under tutelage of someone during your WWE run so far, whether it was Lena Vega, Seth Rollins, Johnny Gargano, Mr. McMahon. How do you feel now that you're your own man and kind of, in your opinion, like, who is Theory?
To me, and this is kind of who Theory is. Theory's always been his own person. I don't mind rubbing shoulders and getting advice and learning stuff, but I've always had a mission, and that's to do whatever it takes to get to the top. It says it in the theme song because it's true, and I'm all day. And the reason I say that is because I will go at it until I can't no more, and I constantly prove that. Doesn't matter how many F5s I take, I get up. How many briefcase shots I take, I get up. I'm back every day, all day.
And on the subject of tutelage and mentors and that kind of stuff, so you mentioned that kind of how you broke in through the independence and then through Evolve. What was the center experience like for you? And is there anyone there who kind of helped you along the way, maybe that you consider a career mentor, whether it was a coach or whether it was another wrestler?
Yeah, the first person that comes to mind is Shawn Michaels. The the ability to be able to sit in his class and watch one of your matches back, and just the point of view and the feedback and the direction he takes you on is it's very helpful, and it's very educating as well. And just, I mean, we all know the legacy of Shawn Michaels, so you can only imagine, me sitting in there. And I think at the time I'm like maybe 23 in there just listening to Shawn Michaels, and I'm just like, wow. But the whole experience at the Performance Center was great. I mean, anything you need is there. There's so many rings. There's, ways to do promos anywhere, different ways. Somebody's always got a camera to shoot a promo. You can work out. There's great rehab stuff. It's just endless. It's, to me, it's like the factory of like sports entertainment. Like it's great.
It's so interesting about Shawn Michaels too, because sometimes in sports, the extremely high level, Hall of Fame caliber guys sometimes aren't the best coaches. And it seems like it's the exact opposite with Shawn Michaels. How do you feel about him kind of being at the helm of this current period of NXT now and getting that next generation ready?
I think it's great just because, when you have somebody that can look at stuff a bunch of different ways, is it's always going to be great, because to me that's creativity from a lot of different directions. And especially with Shawn Michaels, as talented as he is and all the things that he's seen, I just think NXT is in such great hands.
I think a Theory versus Shawn Michaels match would have been something else.
You said would have been. We should just do it right now.
We'll have to check with him and see if he's still going to think about that. But I know a lot of times guys who come out of the wrestlers that come out of the Performance Center, they always kind of mention kind of this tape study. Was there anybody who the coaches recommended for you to kind of look at, from the past that as you were kind of making your way?
I never would say I was necessarily recommended anybody, but maybe like just kind of watching for different things. It depended on if, let's say, if we were watching a match and it was like, now you see right here where this could have been a little more this way or that way. Then there would be some kind of match or moment from the past that they would say, look at this, we'll compare it. So it was never really exactly a certain person, I would say.
Yeah, I was trying to come up with yesterday, like who I would compare you to. And it's funny because the person I ended up landing on is the person who's appearing on Monday Night Raw on Monday at Pittsburgh, which is Kurt Angle, because, you look at the size, the physique, the athletic ability, and also the penchant for wanting to be entertaining. as well as just the aptitude and the speed in which you picked it up. Has he been somebody you've ever studied, or obviously it sounds like you're a student of the game, so I'm guessing you're all too familiar with his work anyway.
Yeah, that's the first time that I've ever gotten Kurt Angle as a comparison. That's an honor though. Yeah, Kurt's one of those guys that to me was like just like a pit bull, you know. He could unleash it and he could, you know, beat the hell out of somebody. And I feel like honestly with his personality and the way he could show that, and he wasn't just, you know, a wrestler and he was good at wrestling. He had the all around package. And I think it's really cool to be able to see a guy that is, you know, just such a bad dude on another level, and just to have that, you know, funny personality. He can put a cowboy hat on and be hilarious. So, I mean, thank you for that comparison, though.
Yeah, no problem. It really, when I watched you opening the Gargano way at Christmas, I was like, well, all right, this guy's really good, but he really knows how to entertain too. So that's kind of really, you know, that's really kind of struck me as the comparison there, because he was not afraid to put himself out there in
Yeah,
some crazy situations.
thank you for that.
You also had some paths crossed recently with John Cena. What did that mean to you, and kind of what would that be like for you to ever step between the ropes against him?
Well, for me, anytime that I have a moment to do anything with John Cena, it's always going to mean the world to me, just because of my past. And that's who got me into WWE. That's who got me interested in wanting to literally make this my life, was him. So anytime I get to do anything with him, especially when we did the promo together, that was just like I probably watched it back so many times just because, you know, it's John Cena in theory. So, but anytime John's around, man, it's definitely a privilege.
I was going to ask you too, going back to the angle thing a little bit. Did you wrestle? What was your athletic background prior to WWE, in addition to the bodybuilding?
Yeah, so a lot of people get shocked about this, and it's funny too because when I do interviews, a lot of times, you know, like, what's your, you know, what do you think of this sports team, or what's your favorite sports? And I actually don't watch sports. I'm obviously familiar with them, but I didn't even play sports growing up. When I was a kid, maybe before I seen wrestling was when I, you know, was doing like as a kid basketball and baseball. But after I seen wrestling, I did not want to play a sport. I didn't want to rely on a team. I just like strictly wanted to say, "Hey, I'm going to solo focus on myself and get to WWE." And that was just the plan.
Wow. So we're going to move on to something we call the 3 count now. It's going to be three quick questions, sort of, and your answers. So, number one, what were your 3 favorite selfies that you took in WWE so far?
I would say one that I think is just hilarious is when Brock put his hat on me. I kind of turned it around and took a selfie with it on, just to, you know, that's just me. So I have that one with the cowboy hat. I would definitely say the selfie with Mr. McMahon with the United States Championship. And I have to say the one standing over Las Vegas on the top of that ladder with Money in the Bank in my hand.
Are there any funny ones that you've taken that we haven't seen on television that are just backstage of you goofing around?
Yes, you know, sometimes I get some guys that I'll just be, you know, messing around, go to take the selfie, and they'll just flick me off. So it's great. We'll be able to show everybody one day, I'm sure.
And anybody that you haven't taken one with that you would like to?
Yes, and that is the tribal chief and John Cena. But
Ooh.
maybe, you know, I know when I took my selfie with John Cena, a lot of people say he walked away, but I mean, you can't see him. So, I mean, I don't know.
Second question: aside from what will inevitably be your own, which was your favorite Money in the Bank cash? And I guess Rollins is generally regarded as the best. I was at Ziggler's, and that was electric. I was actually watching Van Dam's yesterday, and that was actually probably my favorite. What was yours?
One that stands out to me is when Edge cashed in on
Yeah.
Cena. That was and you know, it was funny because, you know, Mr. McMahon walks out and it's like, oh, this is so messed up, you know. But I mean, you know, if I was Edge, I would have loved that moment and done the same thing.
And that was the original one. I think that was the first cash in because he was the first Money in the
Yeah,
Bank
and I
winner.
remember I if I can remember correctly, the case was just completely black.
Oh,
It was just a completely black briefcase.
yeah,
So no,
that was in Puerto Rico New Year's Revolution, I think it was, when he cashed in. Yeah,
okay.
that was a great one too. And finally, the last question: if Theory could go back in time and face anyone in the history of the industry, who would it be and why?
Stone Cold Steve Austin. And the reason why, it's, you know what? The reason isn't because he stunned me at WrestleMania, okay? The reason is because, I mean, to me, I feel like that energy that Stone Cold brought, it's so hard to match. Like when that glass breaks, it's man, I just could only imagine them hating me and loving him, and just how ridiculous of just an arena eruption that would be.
That was a pretty electric couple of moments at WrestleMania. I mean, obviously, him headlining the show against Kevin Owens is one thing, and you know his involvement with you. What was it like? What was that feeling like in the stadium when you know you had him? You know, it's Stone Cold, and he's back, and it's really him.
I remember standing in the corner of the ring after the Pat McAfee match, and Mr. McMahon was standing with him in the center of the ring. And he's talking with Mr. McMahon. He's looking at him. He's talking to him, moving his head like crazy. And then he just gives me a look. And then when he gives me the look, I'm like, "Here we go!" Start running at him. He starts beating me up, stuns me. That moment, though, like it all kind of got to sit in, because it was a good. I would say it was a good 5 seconds of me just getting to kind of look up and see those two and just be like, "We're here. This is wild." So it was an awesome moment.
Did you get any opportunity at all to kind of talk shop with Stone Cold Steve Austin about your career, about kind of what his thoughts are? Because I feel like you'd be somebody that would be right up his alley, you know, in terms of wrestling.
Yeah, we didn't get to talk for too long because you know how WrestleMania is. It's a
Yeah.
chaotic, crazy day. But he pretty much asked me how old I was, and he was like, "Man, you gotta, you have a hell of a future, man, if you keep things together." And I think he's seen a few of the things I've done, and just kind of gave me some good advice, and kind of said, "Just keep doing what you're doing." And I mean, to me, hearing that from Stone Cold, that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Theory, thank you so much for joining us today on Under the Ring Pro Wrestling Conversations. I really enjoyed this, and all the best to you moving forward with everything you got going on, whether it's Clash of the Castle in Cardiff and maybe cashing in, or just anything you're going to be doing in the future. Really, really enjoying your stuff.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you for having me on. It was a pleasure.